You spend a lot of time in your living room, so it better look good. Or at least I hope it does. Hey there, hi, welcome to the channel. I am Garrett, and in this video, we are talking all about living rooms and luxury and upgrading and elevating the space because we definitely can, and we can do that pretty easily with just some minor changes. We've got a number of these to get through, so let's get into the video. The first living room mistake I see being made all of the time is actually these overly bulky, ornate sofas. These never look sophisticated or elegant, because they're kind of just imitations of things that are authentic, are vintage antiques like Victorian pieces. That doesn't mean that they can't look good or they can't work. If you're interested in one of these pieces, I'd recommend getting it in a monochromatic color scheme. If you already have one of these pieces, having them backed up to something or in a position where you can't see the back is actually going to be beneficial because of the bulk of the piece. They can feel very heavy very quickly. They can also be tall. They're a little bit overly ornate for not a real reason, and that's why having them positioned in a way that you can't see the back or the front is facing you when you walk into that space will actually reduce the visual scale and the proportions. These can be worked with beautifully. For example, a Chesterfield sofa is something that has quite a bit of bulk to it and curved arms, they're rounded, they actually take up quite a bit of space. But in an appropriate scaled space, they actually look beautiful. You can flank them. Hey, I have Chesterfield sofas that I love. The tufted, the upholstery on them looks great, but they are bulky. So think about your space, measure it, look at the walkways and decide, can that piece of furniture actually fit or work in the space? That's something that needs to be planned and thought out. You always want to make sure you have clear walkways and pathways in any space, let alone a living room, but overly and ornate, bulky sofas may not be the perfect piece for a smaller scale space. If you're in the position where you were looking for new sofas, some alternatives are something that maybe has the same dimensions or measurements, but has thinner lines, thinner arms, or a thinner back. Something like this will increase the visual space and reduce the visual scale of the piece, even though it might be the same size. Something else worth considering if you have a smaller space is a sofa that has a little bit of openness underneath it. That allows you to see more of the floor space, making the space feel larger. The next living room mistake that I see all of the time is actually creating a space that's overly matchy-matchy. We always want a space to coordinate and colors to work together and for them to have some connection to one another, but that doesn't mean you have to fall into a pattern of having something that's matchy-matchy. You can take a pattern, for example, and pull two of the colors out of that and use them as accent colors within the space. That way they have a relationship and connect back to that pattern or fabric without being matchy with each other. That's a really great example. Another one is actually my living room, my space right here that you can see. In my foyer on my table, I have a small figure, it's actually a bookend, of Beethoven playing a piano. He's gold and the piano is black. The gold of the actual figure ties in with the gold on the table, the gold on the frames, and the gold on the fringe on my little pillow that you can see here in the corner. The next example is blue and white. I have a little jar on my table there. It's absolutely gorgeous and I adore it, and it's shoppable on my Amazon storefront, but it's tying in with the white of this pillow next to me and the blue of the other pillow. It connects with the space. It creates connection, cohesivity. That is something really important in a space without it feeling overly matchy-matchy or overly decorated. You don't have to stick just to solid colors, and it's really great to incorporate a pattern within a space, which is actually the next living room mistake I see all of the time is a lack of pattern. Pillows, upholstery, fabrics, rugs, all of that can have beautiful pattern that ties in with your space. And hey, maybe you say, Garrett, I love modern design. I don't want to have a lot of floral patterns or things that feel a little bit dated to you. Well, that's okay because you can have a geometric pattern. There's lots of beautiful things out there that will tie into your space. Also, a lot of minimalistic patterns in terms of color scheme are out there that will also elevate and upgrade. This is something easy to incorporate into a space, whether that's through a rug, a pillow, a drapery, or maybe just a piece of artwork. There's a lot of options you have out there that can both create a visual interest, tie in a color scheme, and will give you a little bit of that subtle pattern you might be after. In order to avoid that matchy-matchy color scheme, look for a pattern or even two that incorporate the same colors together. It creates connection, cohesivity, without giving you that visual kind of bulky, matchy-matchy weight that your space may have. The next living room mistake that I see being made all of the time is visual cables. Now, that is just the nature of life, is having plugs and outlets and cables. And I actually did a video all about how to hide some of the ugly home essentials. Definitely check that out, linked in the description box down below. But what you can do is get creative about how you're hiding those cables. There's cable management systems. You can have a contractor come and install cables behind your wall. That's always something that really cleans up a space. But I recently discovered a really great revolutionary product, and that is flat extension cords. If you have a floating living room, you have end tables with lamps. How do you plug them in without running these bulky extension cords? These are ingenious because they're flat and run under your rug over to an outlet. Something like this is really creative, and I suggest you look into how to hide some of those cables. Think about the cables you have in your space and what is going to make them disappear or work best for you, because not every space is the same and not every piece of information or advice works in every space. Be sure to check those cables out linked in the description box down below. And while you're at it, take one moment to hit that subscribe button. It means a lot for content creators and it keeps us creating. It takes 1 second of your time to hit the subscribe button and maybe just one more to hit the bell notification to get notified every time I upload. We truly appreciate every one of you that is here, that has hit that button, and we look forward to continuing on this journey with you in 2022 and beyond. Now, the next living room mistake that I see all of the time is forgetting about a conversation area. This is something that's important to a space because as our lives change, as society develops, we are using our homes in different ways. And a lot of times people don't want formal living rooms. I personally can't relate, but a lot of you can, and a lot of you don't have the space to have multiple living rooms in your home. That's absolutely okay, and an easy way to make your more informal family room into a more entertainment-like space is by making sure you have at least one accent chair. What this does is it creates a sense of formality within the space. Having that chair will section off the living room, divide it from another area, or it gives you that one place where you can elegantly sit and entertain. That accent chair is essential. You may not want to do a pair of chairs. You may say, Garrett, what do I do if I have a big sectional that's comfy and cozy? Well, add a chair that matches or is a similar scale. Maybe it's slightly smaller, it has open legs, or it's a little bit less visually heavy. An accent chair will immediately make a living room space feel just a little bit more sectioned off and a little bit more private. An accent chair is a great way to divide an open concept space. It sections your living room off from another area. Turning that chair with its back facing whatever it is you're trying to divide the space from will immediately create a visual pathway, a blockage, a wall of sorts that will serve as a visual barrier between two spaces. Accent chairs can be used to divide a space, to open a space, to create better flow, or to block off a pathway you don't want people walking on. Accent chairs are totally underrated in interior design because they can be used to change your life and the way you live in your home, not just to serve as an accent. The next living room design mistake I see being made all of the time is prioritizing cozy over comfort. Cozy is visual. That's what we see. It is, yes, a feeling, but it's a feeling that's easy to create when you follow these general rules and principles. Not that you have to follow any rules because it's your home and your space. You should do what you want in it, but creating a space that just looks cozy doesn't necessarily mean it will be comfortable. Cozy oftentimes mean we bring in more layers, we bring in more texture, we're putting another rug down or that big fuzzy faux fur pillow. That's not actually necessary if you're using contrast, if you're using scale and proportion in a space. If you select furniture that is comfortable over just visual, you will immediately have a space that feels cozy. Another way to create a cozy looking space without having to bring in layers or things you don't necessarily want is through lighting. Have a dim or a moodier lighting scheme. I always recommend installing a dimmer switch because you can immediately take a space from feeling bright and light and glamorous into dark and moody and relaxing. Something like that will make the space look cozy at night when you're actually in there enjoying it, and a little bit more bright and vibrant during the daytime. Comfort and cozy are not the same thing, and they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to have a space that looks cozy to be comfortable, and just because a space is comfortable doesn't mean it's cozy. Having a proper lighting plan, design scheme, layout, scale, proportion, everything immediately makes a space that feels cozy. You don't have to work that hard to achieve that effect if you are paying attention and you take your time. The next living room design mistake I see all of the time is the wrong scale of accessories. We are living at a time when the accessory is the new sofa and everybody is out looking for the new vessel or the new vase or the new this or that. And what I'm often seeing is we'll use a really large piece next to a medium-sized piece, next to a small-sized piece, and then we'll do that here and there and there and there. It creates a space that is all accessory and becomes a little bit overwhelming and a little bit cluttered feeling, no matter what the style is. I personally, in my home, like to stick to accessories that are a little bit more in line, that are in keeping with each other, because it allows me to have more visual space, a little bit less visual weight, and it lets me focus on the main pieces in my space, like sofas, like chairs, like what I'm actually being comfortable on. Having your accessories be the correct scale for the space or tied into the space that look cohesive is going to benefit you more. For example, let's say you have a console or a commode table and you have a leaning photograph on it. Now that photograph has become a part of the furniture. It extends the visual weight of that piece upward. You can take a large scale lamp or vessel, larger pieces of accessories and decor, and put them on there without overwhelming the piece. But if you have a lot of wall space around a piece or you are hanging a piece of artwork, you don't necessarily have to use big pieces of accessories and decor. I recommend pieces that are mid-size, that aren't competing with everything else going on, to reduce the visual weight of a space. It's called reducing clutter, and oftentimes we see a lot of big pieces everywhere because we immediately think big pieces are better for decorating. I'm not saying go out and collect little itty teeny tiny collectible pieces and use them to decorate with. That's a personal thing, and if you collect those, go for it. But consider the amount of space you have and how much visual interest you are willing to dedicate to those accessories. Do you need a ton of decor in the space to make it feel full? Probably not, especially if you're using warmer tones, a little bit of texture, and some visual interest, a good color scheme. All of that balances out accessories. Which leads me into the next mistake, and that is too much decor or over accessorizing. Staging a home to just be beautiful for photos that you've seen on social media or whatever that is can be nice and it looks good for that time being, but just keep in mind that you're using the impact of what you're doing on your furniture pieces, on the layout, on the way the space is used, as opposed to just bringing in more accessories to fill the space. You probably don't need to fill the space if the accessories are the right size or right scale. You don't need to cover every surface with something because it's going to take away from whatever that surface is you're covering. Maybe that's a good thing for you, but usually it creates a space that feels cluttered and feels a little bit overwhelming. I also recommend taking a little bit less time and focusing on these smaller pieces and saving up for something that's bigger or more impactful. You may have 100 vessels, but if you only had 10, you might be able to afford that new sofa you're after. Buying lots of little pieces isn't necessarily the biggest bang for your buck, and you don't have to have them in a space to make it feel beautiful or cultivated. A lot of times those little accessories, if they don't have a ton of meaning to you, or if they're not collectible or valuable or whatever, you can get them relatively affordable and have a memory associated with them on the hunt to find that beautiful piece in your budget. Take your time and find the right accessories, and take your time and figure out if they are worth spending the money on, if they're going to have that kind of impact. Maybe you even sit there, sketch it out, see what that's going to look like in your space, and visualize whether or not it's worth your time or money, because sometimes it's worth putting your budget into a bigger piece or a larger ticket item than it is to have a lot of smaller, less expensive ones. The next living room mistake that I see all of the time, and I want you to think about, is, are you overdoing the accent? Most spaces naturally have an accent feature. It might be a fireplace, it might be your high ceilings, it may be a big, beautiful window. You don't have to compete with that and create another accent. You can take advantage of what you already have and incorporate that into the design scheme. You can visually proportion the space to take advantage of whatever that is. And you might be in a smaller space that doesn't have that accent. That's the perfect place to create one, whether that is through a color, whether that's through a vibrant pattern or piece of artwork, maybe it's wallpaper or whatever that is you've decided for your space. But if you've got one of these beautiful spaces that already has an accent feature, a historic fireplace or a beautiful window, high ceilings, a decorative molding of some sort, don't compete with it, because you don't have to. You don't have to add another accent or a contrasting color. That piece will speak for itself. Sometimes adding another accent piece, accent color, or furniture piece to a space is only going to take away from what you have, and sometimes it's just going to lead you to compete with something that you're going to have to overcompensate for to overcome. Well, there you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below, because I want to hear from you and tell me, what's one design mistake you see in a living room that makes it immediately uncomfortable, or that you can't stand, or that is overwhelming? Be sure to share with us down below. And while you're at it, give this video a like. I also know that you know someone that is redecorating their living room, and they maybe could use a little help. They're making some of these mistakes, and I just don't have the time to take care of everyone's spaces for them, and you know that. So go ahead and share this video with them, because friends help friends, and I will see you in the next one.